I've got my bookshelves, I've got my box of tissues. I think we're ready to start. Welcome, I am Tara. Usually we talk about books and gardening here, but I want to revisit a topic that we talked about way back in 2017 and 2018, mental health. I was really inspired to make this video because Ashley of Bookish Realm posted a video about how her mental health affects her reading. It'll be linked below. And she really talks about where she's at right now and how that's impacting her reading, and how when people ask her how she reads so much, there's often like mental health stuff going on in the background. Go watch her video and then come back. I thought I would give you a little update on how my own mental health has been going since the last time we talked about it here in 2018, because my life exploded in a joyous reign of children in 2020. Explosion always sounds kind of negative, and that's not what I mean. I just mean literally every single thing about my life and my sense of self and sense of confidence was blown up by the arrival of my 4 children. And inspired by Ashley, I thought I would also mention how this impacts my reading, because like her, I really can look back at years I read more and years I read less and track that with where my mental health was. So I think this is very important to talk about. I don't particularly like talking about it. I always feel extremely vulnerable and very nervous, but then we have the best conversations afterwards, and you tell me that you felt seen or that you understand something about yourself, and it makes it all worth it. And it makes it all worth it if it's helpful. We need to talk about it because A, we need to normalize conversations about mental health. It makes it easier to get help. It makes it easier to get treatment and continue with your treatment when it's normalized to talk about. And the real difference, like a doctor considers the difference between normal healthy feelings like sadness because of grief, or because there's a global pandemic, or because your life blew up, the more serious illnesses that need treatment are when it becomes an issue of length and severity. So when it starts to impact your ability to live your life. So before we get into it, I want to say there may be mentions of suicide, suicidal ideation, depression, other mental health diagnoses. And so if you are not in a good place, or if hearing about that is not healthy for you, don't watch, turn it off. It's okay, we're still friends. And please get help if you need it. I'm going to put the National Suicide Hotline below. You can contact somebody there and get help right away. I am not a therapist. I'm not a doctor. I am a person who has read a lot and have experienced, and I'm only sharing from my personal experience. I am not telling you to do anything except for to go see a professional. Okay. Back in 2017, a longtime student, someone I had talked with every week online in my class chat room, she committed suicide. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. Not just the grief, not just the shock, but also the realization that my longtime crippling depression could be dangerous. Honestly hadn't occurred to me before that I might have a mental health diagnosis that could get help or that could get worse. And it threw me into a state of a shock, also a deep depression, and I went to the doctor. I've had quite a journey finding out what works for me. I talk about it in 2 older videos I'll link up below. In 2018, I was in a good place. I had not found a medication that worked, but I found a lot of lifestyle changes helped lessen it, which they're really hard to implement when you're in the worst of it. I'd done EMDR right before my children arrived in the early summer of 2020 for some traumatic events in my past, and that had been incredibly helpful with my panic attacks and my anxiety. And then when the kids showed up in the middle of a global pandemic, I felt overjoyed, ecstatic, busy. I had 2 babies under 1 year old, and I thought, I'm too tired and busy to ever feel depressed again. I honestly thought maybe it will never reoccur. So I don't have to worry about the doctor I was seeing that was kind of managing my symptoms was a general practitioner, and she left the practice when I went to go get just a checkup for foster care paperwork. She wasn't there anymore, and I thought, it's fine. I'll be fine. Well, then I was sleep deprived by 2 babies under 1 year old for a solid year, and we bought our first house, and I moved to 6 people, which I was almost entirely responsible for because my husband was working full time, also in the house with a baby screaming. It was very extremely I can't even put into words what a high stress, low sleep time of my life was for a solid year. And also, and I think this is really the most significant part for my own mental health, was that I was no longer doing anything that I had professionally done and the business I'd built for over 10 years. That was a huge part of my identity, which is maybe its own issue to be dealt with. But it also brought up new layers of stuff that I needed to deal with, new realizations of stuff I needed to deal with, as did motherhood, as did being one of the two adults responsible for 4 children that have their own traumatic experiences and are dealing with them with me every day, plus just being kids. And then I want to say that this was all made worse because I thought I really should not feel anything but happy, because I am so beyond honored to be given the opportunity to be in these children's lives. They and their birth families have experienced so much trauma and pain, and my life is so much better because they're in it. So I should only feel happy and better because they're in it, right? And another reason I felt like I wasn't allowed to feel any kind of way is because I didn't even give birth. I truly felt like, well, if I didn't go through that, I mean, what I should be in great health. And on top of that, my children, they're beautiful. They are perfect. They are kind and loving to each other. They are sweet. I can't even, okay? So that's the thing about chronic illness, though, is that it does not care how good your life is or how great you feel about it or how amazing your children are or how loving and supportive your partner is. But it doesn't care about that. It doesn't care about how fulfilled you are by your work. I finally recognized that for what it was, that it was going on in June and July of 2022. And in around August or September, I figured it out. I couldn't get in to see a provider until October, and I called many of them, and we pay a lot of money for insurance through the company where my husband works. And I finally got in to see somebody, and they were not a good fit. They talked to me for over 30 minutes about their personal story, their relationship with their father, their boyfriend that they broke up with 2 years ago but had been together for 7 years. Like, I know way too many details about this nurse practitioner's life. And then they rushed the questions at the end about suicide and suicidal ideation because we ran out of time in our hour. She even said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I talked too much. We ran out of time." And so she was just like, "You haven't thought about killing yourself. You haven't had suicidal ideation. You aren't." She literally asked me like that, those extremely important questions. She did, however, prescribe a medication that almost immediately lifted the physical aspects of my depression. It made me able to do things other than just the bare minimum of taking care of my children. It made me feel like I could handle some things. And although the provider wasn't good at fit, and I am still actually looking to find the right provider, it will probably be 9 months from my initial starting to call people and making appointments until I get in with an actual psychiatrist. But I am feeling better. I'm feeling functional. That's why I've been able to make videos. There were months where I would not have been physically able to do this. So I wanted to share that because finding a provider, especially in America, is hard. And taking medication or finding the right medication is hard. So that's where I am today. I feel like I have a clearer perspective on my particular specific diagnosis, which we haven't really talked about here, just to be clear. I also feel like I'm becoming more accepting of the fact that I might always be kind of in recovery, in that I will have active times of not being my best and active times of being my best. And that's okay. Everybody has something. And everyone is dealing with something, and this is part of my life, and I'm becoming more accepting that this isn't just going to go away because like some life goal was met, right? So we could talk about depression, anxiety, panic disorders from all different facets. We could talk about how it affects my parenting, or how it affects my relationship with my partner, or how it affects my finances, or how it affects how I run my business, or how it affects how I interact with other people. But today we're going to talk about how it affects my reading. And the thing is, it's so clear that it does impact all of my hobbies. Now, I could talk about how it affected any of my other hobbies like knitting or hand sewing, but the thing is, kids also affect those, and life circumstances affect those, kind of separate from mental health in a way that really having kids did not change my reading that much. Like, I have fewer afternoons to lay on the couch and read, but I can wash dishes instead of laying on the couch and listen to an audiobook. I washed hundreds and hundreds of bottles by hand while listening to audiobooks. I sat in the NICU and held my son for so many hours, popped him down my shirt for so many hours while listening to like the scariest thrillers on audiobook. And I have read many, many books late into the night when my brain is just like, can't sleep, either because I'm listening to see if a baby is going to wake up, because a kid is sick and I'm sitting up with them. Just a way that I haven't felt creative to pick up my creative hobbies, but I would still pick up books. So that's why I think looking at reading is an interesting way to look at it, because it's been impacted by a lot of major changes in my life. The main thing I've noticed is also what Ashley mentioned in her thing, which is when I am in a period of low mood, depression, I read more. You might, and there have been times when I've read less because I can't focus. Like, often the curve starts to go down. I disengage from people in my life. I disengage from my real life. I care less about doing the things to keep my life running, which is its own hassle. And so as I start to go down, I read more and more and more because I'm pulling away from my real life. I'm not interacting with people. I have a hard time making eye contact, and it's hard to get emotional, and I don't feel emotions. I get sick of listening to other people. Depression is incredibly self-involved, and I read more and more. And then at my very lowest points, I have not been able to read at all because I'm not able to focus on anything. So I can't follow anything. And that includes watching TV and movies. I had a long period of time where I couldn't watch any TV, completely lose my ability to focus. So that happens with really bad depression, but usually actually my over reading, my reading more than is healthy for a life where I also have other responsibilities, is a sign that things are not great and I need to check it out. And I almost hesitate to say that because as a kid, I was always told by teachers, by parents, by family members, you read too much, you read too much. Looking back, I can see that I was escaping things. I was escaping certain interactions that I was uncomfortable with. I was escaping feeling my feelings about things. It was a coping mechanism as a kid, and it's a coping mechanism now. Sometimes it's a healthy one. It's much healthier than many of the other things that are available as coping mechanisms. It's a healthy to a degree, but it's also a kind of warning flashing light when things get a little too intense. And on the flip side, when I am not doing great because I am too anxious and I am too overthinking things, I'm feeling too unsafe, like physically, my body is giving me the signs that I am unsafe, I'm not able to read at all. Again, I'm not able to focus or remember things. It's bizarre because my brain thinks the more I think about something, the safer I'll be and the better I'll be able to remember it. But what actually happens is everything important falls out of my brain because it's focused on one thing to think about. And sometimes that leads me to reading, like going really deep dives into like really random topics. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, why did I read 6 books about that? I've been on Goodreads for over 10 years. So it's a really great view of my old things I was interested in. My to be read list like has periods of time where I was like super into one thing. I want to stress here that just like feelings of sadness or feelings of nervousness are completely natural and healthy reactions to the world we live in, reading to escape what's going on, reading to learn about new things, reading to think about new things is really healthy for so many reasons. But the difference is the level of intensity and duration. So when I am doing it because I'm feeling anxious, if I'm reading 10 books on, say, seed starting because I want to get the dates just right, that's not so healthy. If I'm reading 10 books on seed starting because I'm just really into it and I'm really having fun and I'm learning so much and biology is amazing and it's making me feel good, that's totally healthy. So I just want to be careful when I'm talking about my own experiences. This is not applicable to anyone else. You have your own. And that's actually what I'd like to ask you to think about, is how does your reading, or really anything you do in your life, any hobby you have, how can you see your mental health reflected in it? do you tend to do things because you're having a bad day and it's a healthy coping mechanism, or do you go too hard instead of getting some other help? We have a community here of crafters and makers and readers, and I know that a lot of us use our hand making or reading as a way of like adding joy to our lives, and also as a way of taking a break from our lives, and that can be healthy or be a little too much in either direction, for depending on the intensity and the duration and why you're doing it. I'd like you to think about that and comment below if you want to share or talk about it. If you do a video or a podcast or an Instagram post where you talk about this, please let me know. You can put the link below in the comments. I'd like to know that I'm not alone in this, which is why I so appreciate Ashley's post. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being so encouraging and for being so kind. And I hope you have a really great, wonderful day. I